The Live Well, Live Strong quilt top that we are working on piecing together all the quilt blocks, and we're going to put together some sections today. So, but we are going to do this with a Frixion pen. And Frixion pens usually come in a, sorry, I've got a cord right there, but usually come in an assortment of colors because you might want to use a certain color with a certain shade of fabric or things like that. So it's so good to see you guys today. Let me know where you're calling from. This is all for the Live Well, Live Strong pattern. Original version is right back here behind me. That's 60 by 60 inches. We have two of the negative space versions right here of the quilt. We have got the teeny tiny foundation paper piecing version right here. And you can see the paper on the back. So we're working on piecing all the different sections. And right here is a version of the quilt that you guys can see that is grays and whites. So you can see this one right here. And this I'm actually, hi Liz, is for a bed runner for me or on my king size bed. So we've got lots of different options for you for this quilt. But right now what I'm trying to do is support you guys in piecing together your quilt top so you feel good about it. And then how we're going to get those quilt tops layered and quilted on your machine quilting. Okay, however you're going to do that. So let's go ahead. Hi, Amanda. So you have a sunny, nice day in Louisiana. That is wonderful. I cut out again. Oh, darn it. Okay, well, we're going to have to study this computer. I am so sorry. I'm going to have to look at the memory on this computer because it does take a lot of memory to stream these live videos. So what we are going to work on, I'm going to show you on this quilt right here. But when you piece together this quilt top, there are really essentially two sides. There is this section and side right here, you can see, and then there is this section right here, okay? So if I folded the quilt like this, you could see this is one way that you can see how the quilt top is put together. Hello, Joyce, how are you? It's so good to see you. And this is the section we're working on today. So we're working on this half of the quilt. We're going to actually, this last week we worked on this part right here, but today we're going to sew the shine quilt block to up here to these silk quilt blocks right here. So that's what we're going to work on today. Then next week we are going to work on these sections. So we've worked on this section. I'm going to have this, we're going to sew this together and sew this together, put those around the straight quilt block, and we just sew these few down here at the bottom of the quilt. So this is another row right there. So you can kind of see this, that the quilt comes together. It's a sampler quilt, but it comes together in units. If you're doing the negative space quilt, you're going to have a much larger quilt that goes to queen, king, twin, or full, and those you use negative space fabric. So over here I've used a white as fabrics in between the blocks, and over here I've used a aqua, what is that fabric called? I can't remember it right now. Anyways, but it's all these fabrics have different names, don't they? But yeah, it's a really soft aqua. It's gonna bug me, I can't think of that name, but that's kind of silly to get stuck on that. Okay, so this is the unit that we have already sewn together, and today we are going to sew on the bottom here, and I'm trying to do this on the front camera because we are going to go ahead and sew the shine quilt block right here to the bottom of this segment that I'm holding. So, and I am so glad we have gotten some moisture here in Utah. We got some snow, a little bit of skip of snow last night, but I'm really glad we're getting some moisture because they are predicting a drought. So, all right, so what we are going to do is I'm going to take this bottom section right here, and we are going to pin that up, and I have already squared off my quilt block so that it is the right size. So please remember that I've squared up my quilt block to make sure I'm working with a good size. And then I'm going to put these two right sides together. So the shine quilt block is a large quilt block, and it's the exact width of this section right here. So, and what I'm going to go over with you today is we're going to sew these right sides together, but you can see I've got some seams to match up right here. There's a 1/4 inch seam allowance right there, and there is a 1/4 inch seam allowance right here to try to match while we're sewing these together. And there's another 1/4 of an inch there. We do have some 1/4 of an inch on this side. So when we're working over here with this block. So I'm going to want to go ahead and mark but I'm going to either use the colored pencil. This one's water soluble, and the Frixion pens are heat soluble. So we're going to look at that, and I'm going to show you guys how these work and when we might use it in different instances. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's start pinning this together. So I'm going to flip the camera so you're going to see the overhead view. And this little bar right here is where it's holding up the overhead camera, so you guys can kind of get a little bit of a behind the scenes shot. We have a wider view for you guys to see. And here's our Frixion pens we're going to be using. Okay, so let's go ahead and pin this right sides together so you can see where I'm at. And remember, I'm going to want to make sure I meet each of these sides. I have already measured to make sure that I'm matching the size that these units should be, so that my block size is the exact size it should be, and so is this section right here of the quilt. So when I'm going to pin, when I pin, I don't pin all the way where my seam allowance is, because I don't want to be popping off and on when I'm trying to get like a really good straight seam. I also have some threads to trim here. You can see I always have some threads to kind of trim off, just so I've got a cleaner look. But we're going to go ahead and pick those off. And then we're going to come along here, and you can see right here I've got a navy blue up against this one. And I've got 2 seam allowances to match on this side, but on this side I actually have 3 to match. So I'm going to stitch on this side, but I need to remember that there's 2 back there that I do need to match. So let's go ahead and get some more pins, stick some pins in it, and get started today. So right here at this point of matching, I am going to want to match this center of the sun, the shine quilt block, with the center of this right here. So let's go ahead and do this, and we're going to match those up. And I'm going to stick a pin in it, but I'm not going to take my pin all the way through because I just want to sew as I go along. Once again, I'm checking here. I have nothing I have to match this section up to. And you know, if you guys see me a lot, hi Belle, how are you? It is so good. I am so glad you guys are getting some spring weather. We kind of had a chilly day yesterday. Yesterday was my day to watch Ellie, my granddaughter, and I wanted to take her to this farm to go see all the baby animals, but it was just a little bit too cold to go do that. Okay, so I've got these matched up, and these are looking good over on this side. Now, this is where we're going to use our Frixion pen. So I'm going to mark on this white fabric right here, or it's called bleached denim, this particular shade. And why don't we use this purple pen? So you'll find different times you'll want to use different shades of your pen. So it's nice to have a pack of Frixion pens. I've also had some of my Frixion pens for years, and I haven't had them actually go bad. So, you know, you're kind of safe having some good Frixion pens and getting them in there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to want to match right over here this seam on this side of the fabric. And I've got a good amount of space there. So let's go ahead and measure this. So that's a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch seam, but I think that that's going to look beautiful right there. So I'm going to match this up right on the edge, and I am going to do a marking right there with my Frixion pen, because I want to make certain that I am going to for sure be careful with what I am putting right there on the other side. As I stitch along here, this lets me know, be careful, because you're going to come over thicker fabric. It's going to be thicker right there. And once again, I've got this 1/4 of an inch seam, but I've got navy blue fabric. So right here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use my pencil, my water soluble pencil right here. And I am going to just go ahead and match that. That's definitely at 1/4 inch seam, maybe slightly less. So I'm just going to make a small mark here, and taking into account that my pencil, and you can see, let me bring this up closer. I can see that pencil mark. If I used a Frixion pen, I wouldn't necessarily be able to see that. And right over here you can see my mark where I'm going to make sure I match that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So on both of those. Okay? But these ones I can all see on the top side. I'm going to want to make sure that I'm going through that intersection. If you really want to, you could bring this over to give yourself a little bit more confidence. Let me grab my glasses. Well, not seeing my glasses. If you want to give yourself a little bit more confidence where those stitching lines are, go ahead and put a Frixion pen right through there so that you can kind of see where you're wanting to sew through that intersection, because sometimes you get a little bit thread heavy or fabric heavy in these bulky seams with bringing together different points of fabric. So let's go ahead. So you can definitely do that. I'll go ahead and mark this one right here. So if you're not sure you're going to be matching all of your seam allowances, just go ahead and put a quick little mark there. When you press it, this mark with the Frixion pen is going to go away, and I will show you that. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'll bring this up to the camera. You can see that nice Frixion pen marking that, and I've got a small mark right there for me too. Okay, let's bring this through and let's see if we have matched seams after we do this. And we're keeping in account our 1/4 inch seam allowances on both sides. With the Live Well, Live Strong quilt, you are using a true 1/4 inch seam as you piece together your quilt blocks. I'm slowing down just a little bit as I'm going over the bulk of that fabric, because sometimes it gets a little bulky and I might go a little wonky as I'm stitching. Some patterns, they do require a scant 1/4 inch, but you know, sometimes I get a little lazy and I don't read the instructions before I use a pattern, and then I regret myself. So here I am, I'm keeping in mind this little marking that we did with the chalk pencil, and I'm going to bring this over and make sure this one we didn't mark, but I can see where that is. I'm going to just bring that, and let's see on live video if we matched our seams, and if after we press, if it's going to go away. So let's go ahead and pull this out. Let's pull out our pins. We'll see if we have some. Hi Delinda, it's good to see you. It really is. Okay, so let's go ahead and open this up and have the big reveal. See how we did at matching those seams. Okay, so you can see right here, I've got an extra thread, but that looks like a good match right there. I like that. I did match this center one up with the center of these blocks over here, so I've got a good match there. Feel good about that. That looks really nice and clean, so I haven't cut anything off. And over here, I've got a really good match over here too. So it looks absolutely wonderful. Let's go ahead and press this and see if our Frixion really does go away. Okay, so we're going to bring this over, and let's go ahead and just put a little heat on it. I've got my bigger iron just right behind me. Here we go, and that completely disappeared. So let me go ahead and bring this up close to the camera. You can see right here, we've got that Frixion pen. You can see that right in there. Let's go ahead and lay this down and see if it goes away with the heat. If it does what it truly says that it does. And you can see that just completely disappeared. Okay, let's move over here. And I'm not going to want to really press hard where I used my chalk or my other water-soluble pen. I'm going to want to actually put a little bit of, and actually that looks great right there. I think I've already rubbed it off. So anyways, but let's go ahead and give that a good little press across and go to our front video. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to actually, this is the whole left side of the quilt. So that is completely pieced together, and it's some really nice piecing. We've got all of our points matching, which is the goal. So what you can see there is this entire side of the quilt. We have completely pieced. We have pieced parts of this, but that's what we're going to do next week. So we're going to finish piecing this section right over here. So I can't wait to come back, but we already have some units. I'm going to kind of do it unit by unit to kind of give you a feel of what those units are like as we attach it to the strength quilt block. So anyways, so good to see you guys. I can't wait for you to have a fantastic weekend. I'm excited for all of you guys. We're going to try to trim our trees before there's much growth coming out them on our front yard trees. And so we're looking forward to trimming trees. So Corey and I are going to definitely get some exercise. So you guys, live well, live strong. If you're interested in the pattern, you can get it at stitchesquilting.com. So it's so good to see you guys. Have a great weekend. Can't wait to hear how your weekend went. Have a good one.